Get autographed copies of New York Times bestselling author Cynthia Bryan's books at www.starstyleradio.com. Get inspired and motivated to be your best self with Be the Star You Are, 99 gifts, and Be the Star You Are for teens. Buy cases at a deep discount to give away as gifts and premiums. Visit www.starstyleradio.com or call 925-377-STAR. 925-377-STAR. 925-377-STAR.
Look among the stars.
Do you have a plan for your life? Do you know where you want to go? Are you looking to be happier, healthier, and wealthier while having more fun every day? Meet our empowerment architect and goddess gardener, Cynthia Bryan, as she engages in energetic exchanges with successperts, bringing you research, innovations, strategies, and techniques to strengthen your life, business, and personal spaces. Be inspired, motivated, encouraged, and empowered. Lend us your ears right here on Star Style. Be the star you are. The party starts now.
Well, we're glad that you are doing it with style. Hello, Power Partners. Welcome to our party playground. This is Star Style, Be the Star You Are. We're with you every week, live, coming to you from the Voice America Network. This is the Empowerment Channel, and my name is Cynthia Bryan. Well, today's show is going to be very exciting because we have a really fantastic guest coming on in segment 2, who wrote a fascinating book. I was especially intrigued by it, called Murder in Matera, Helene Stupinski. And it's a true story of passion, family, and forgiveness in southern Italy. And she goes back to Italy to trace what happened to her great-grandmother and find out if she was indeed a murderer or if she was something else. And so I think it's going to be really fun. And actually, it's a great-grandmother. So 2 greats in front of that. We are going to also talk about how we can live longer, and how we live longer is going to be through some information about volunteering. You know that I'm really big on all of that, so it's important to volunteer. But coming up in just a second, we're going to be talking about something that Alan Cohen wrote that really inspired me, and I thought, I really have to bring it to you. So the miracle moment for today is brought to you by Be the Star You Are charity. Be the Star You Are can be visited at btsya.org. And this is from Warren Buffett. Give your kids enough to do everything, but not so much that they'll do nothing. I thought that was very appropriate quote. I want to use that often because especially now that I'm writing this book with so many volunteers and contributors called Be the Star You Are for Millennials. And one of the things that I keep getting is how entitled millennials are. And it's not what I have found them to be at all. So for all those parents out there, let's read it again. Give your kids enough to do everything, but not so much that they'll do nothing. And again, a very, very brave quote by Warren Buffett. Well, Alan Cohen is an author and an inspirational lecturer, and he's been on our show several times in the past. And he sends out a monthly newsletter that is always very helpful, just with a story that he has in it. And then he talks about whatever retreats or books or whatever he has coming up. And this one really caught my attention, and I thought I would read it for you today. It's called Somewhere or Nowhere. A certain amount of business work is productive and meaningful. A lot just feels like busy work, filling out forms, fixing website issues, jumping through multi-layered security hoops, getting stuck in voicemail loops, fending off hackers, dealing with people who don't pay attention to instructions. And while on some level these activities may be necessary in an increasingly complex world, a lot of them just feel boring and a waste of time. And at the end of the day, you lay in bed and you wonder, so what did I do today anyway? Perhaps you, like me, would rather do something that's meaningful rather than just busy work. Now, I heard that some doctors spend 1/3 of their time healing people and 2/3 of their time doing paperwork and administrative tasks. So where are their priorities? Soon afterward, we watched one of my favorite films, Lost Horizon. The movie contains a very poignant scene in which high-ranking statesman Robert Conway finds himself in the remote paradise of Shangri-La, where he falls in love with a delightful woman who invites him to stay there with her forever. He explains that he has important work to do back in society, and she tells him, "Come now, you know you are going nowhere. Admit it." Well, Conway thinks for a moment, smiles, and replies, "You're exactly right." And in that moment, he realized that most of the work he's doing is not leading to anything of true value. He is just rolling the dial to nowhere. So if you are tired of running on a hamster wheel, be honest about what you'd rather be doing. How much of your work and daily activities are actually life-giving, and how much are boring and deadening? How much tolerance do you have for the meaningless? Any tolerance at all is tolerance too much. If you are bored, either find a way to make what you're doing interesting or choose something more stimulating. And there are no other options, really. French author Jules Renard said, "I am never bored anywhere because being bored is an affront to oneself." Now, everything you do is either taking you somewhere or it's taking you nowhere. If there is any value in going nowhere, it is to bring you to the realization of the somewhere you would rather be. Our challenge is that nowhere is so highly populated that it seems like somewhere. When billions of people agree that illusions are solid, it's tempting to pitch your tent on a swamp. But reality is not a democracy, and truth does not depend on a number of people who subscribe to it. Mass agreement does not make emptiness full. It takes an innocent mind to see that the emperor isn't wearing clothes. Such people are branded mavericks and heretics, but eventually, when the masses finally catch up with reality, the heretics are lauded, they're knighted, or they're sainted. Paul McCartney, who flipped the bird at the monarchy by smoking pot in Buckingham Palace, was eventually knighted. Now, this is your life we're talking about. You get just so many trips around the sun before you get returned to inventory, and none of us can afford to waste time in irrelevance. There are 3 ways you can immediately add meaning and value to your life. Number 1, follow your joy voice rather than your fear voice. Number 2, connect by focusing on the human element in your work and communication. And number 3, serve. When you take care of people, you remember why we are here. Our deepest purpose is to make each other's lives easier. And everything else is either a means toward that end or a detail. So each day we are presented with numerous dials we can turn. Some of them simply provide the illusion of action, and others actually have an effect. So may you sleep well tonight, knowing that your day on earth was well spent. That's by Alan Cohen. You can visit his website, alancohen.com. I was hoping that he would be able to join us today, but he was not able to. So instead, we bring you that. But it's really pause. It gives you pause to think about it. Of where are you going? And are you doing something that's meaningful? And are you bringing meaning to your life every day? And are you helping others? And we'll talk about that more, actually, when we get to segment 3. Now, one of the other things that was really on my mind this week is all this digital pirating that we are seeing out there. I think it's, it can't help but frighten us that today everything seems to be online. Your bank accounts are online, you're paying your bills online, there's everything about you is online. So it's very hard to have actually any privacy. Anybody can find anything at any time. But if you are thinking about the growing role the internet plays in your financial life, then you probably are nervous. I know it makes me nervous. According to the Identity Theft Resource Center, the number of data breaches grew from 40% from 2015 to 2016. 40% in 1 year. That is really, really, that's like phenomenal to me. So there's a few things that you can do to protect your online personality. Number one is to use a unique password for every account. That is a hard one that I find because, I mean, how many accounts do you have? I think I must have 200 or 300 now. And, you know, to try to remember to keep all of your, your passwords, how do you do that? I don't think that you can do that. You have to use some kind of password, a password, what is it called? A manager, a password manager. There's apps out there. So the password manager can keep track of all of your passwords. So that would be something that is a good thing to do because cyber criminals, they're going to use your credentials that are stolen from one site, and then they're going to access the data on another site. The other thing you can do is to vary your usernames as well. Don't always use it. The principle is the same as with passwords. Use different logins, especially for financial apps, and that can provide just an added layer of protection. And don't use your primary email address as your username whenever possible. Another way is to use your fingerprint. There's a biometric identification available on a lot of smart devices now, and it has a really good, robust safety feature. So if you do have that on any of your smart devices, enable it on all of your hardware and software. And then it's probably offered on a lot of different financial places as well. Now, most of us all know this, but beware of public Wi-Fi. Don't open a financial app. Don't make a purchase online whenever you're connected to a Wi-Fi access. Just make sure you're connected to a private, secure access point. And then keep your profile information current. You want to update your contact information, and you want to enable alerts on your financial apps, and that can help ensure you that you'll receive a timely notice of account activity. Although the only thing that I don't know how they get it, but I think what worries me about some of these things is now you give your cell phone number out as a secondary number or a way to help you to make sure that you can be more secure. But the problem with that is then all of a sudden now you start getting spam cell phone calls. I've been getting every single day, twice a day, I get a call from you have won a 4-day trip to, and it's, completely free. All you have to do, blah, blah, blah. And every single day I block the number. And every single day, there is a new number that pops up and rings my phone number. So I'm not exactly sure how the technology behind that is working, but it's very bothersome to get these calls, especially when you're on another call and it's very important to you. So those are just a few ways to keep yourself safe. But we're going to go to break right now. And when we come back, we are going to have the very exciting memoir from New York Times contributor Helene Stupinski with her newest book, Murder in Matera. So stay tuned. You're listening to Cynthia Bryan. This is Star Style. Be the star you are. We'll be right back.
The star you are. The star you are.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
Are you seeking a dynamo speaker for your meeting, conference, or organization? Internationally recognized keynote speaker and New York Times bestselling author and lifestyle coach Cynthia Bryan will bring her energetic expertise, passionate professionalism, and ebullient personality to your event. Hailed as an expert in lifestyle, women's issues, self-help, personal balance, leadership, media, gardening, and interior design topics, Cynthia Bryan is a popular empowerment keynote speaker around the world, lecturing to audiences of 100 to 5,000. For rates and bookings, call 925-377-STAR, 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 and visit www.cynthiabryan.com. When you want the best, book Cynthia Bryan, www.cynthiabryan.com.
This business of show business is calling out to me.
Get started acting or modeling with a consultation from media coach extraordinaire Cynthia Bryan, who has guided entertainment careers for over 2 decades. Call 925-377-STAR or visit www.cynthiabryan.com. Pick up a copy of her award-winning book, The Business of Show Business, and start living your dreams today. Call 925-377-STAR, 925-377-STAR.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit Facebook.com/Voice America.
It's power time on Star Style. Be the star you are with your passion, purpose, and possibility producer, Cynthia Bryan. Now, back to the Power Party.
This business of show business is calling out to me.
Well, we're really happy that you are still with us here on Star Style. Be the star you are. I am your coach, Cynthia Bryan, and I am excited that you are going to be with us with another pioneer on the planet when I introduce you to this author who returned to the homeland of Italy to track her great-great-grandmother's story that she had heard from the time she was a little girl, that her grandmother was a murderer. But things get changed and things unravel when you go hunting for the truth. Helene Stupinski is with me. Hello, Helene. Thank you for being with us at Star Style.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the name of the book is Murder in Matera, and
right.
it is about your great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother,
right.
Yeah, great, two greats, right?
Right.
Yeah, two greats.
right.
Okay. Yeah, two greats. All right. So we go great. Yeah, I was reading recently that because this is what I found so fascinating for you to be going back to really research her, is that in 3 generations we're completely forgotten. So basically your kids, you, and then your grandparents, and then after that,
we're gone.
They're forgotten. So you didn't forget, because let's tell the story. From the time you were a little girl, you heard this story, or when you were about 4, about your great-great-grandmother Vita.
That's the time I remember, because that's when memory kind of kicks in. But my mother just told these stories over and over and over again. She was a great storyteller. And I was the youngest in the family. And I think everyone else had stopped listening to her. I was 7 years younger than my next sibling, and I was sort of her captive audience.
Oh, right, of course.
And so I eventually wrote them down. Right? I wrote the stories down, so...
Well, I think this is what happens with families, is especially when you're the youngest, is that you're going to hear those stories. I know when we're a big Italian family, and we get together, it's sort of like story number 121.
Right.
Everybody's heard it, and our husbands or our wives who are not part of the Italian clan, they can't believe that any of them are true, but everybody tells the same story. So we don't know what's really true.
Exactly. They go on and on.
You have written, we'll get back to your Murder in Matera in just a second, but I just wanted to say that you are the author of 2 memoirs, 5 Finger Discount, A Crooked Family History, and Baby Plays Around, A Love Affair with Music, because you actually played in a band, and you wrote about that. And you also write as a freelancer for lots of different newspapers and magazines and all of this, which is fantastic. But it seems like this particular story that you penned for Murder in Matera was really something that was dear to your heart, because it took you over 10 years of really exhaustive research to go back. So give us the background about when you actually thought you were a Vina, and about your great-great-grandmother Vita, the way you had heard it.
Well, we had heard that she was a murderer, that her and her husband had committed a murder, and that she had escaped to America with her 2 sons. And my mom always said that there were 3 kids originally, and one got lost along the way. And we didn't know what that meant. We had no proof, we had no name or anything. But my great-grandfather came over with the mom and his brother, and they both became barbers in Jersey City, New Jersey. And so I knew their story. But really didn't know anything about the Vita story, and her husband's name was Francesco Venna. So, when I first went to Italy to research it, it was just sort of like fun for me. I was like, oh, let's see if we can find this story from our family, There's a little bit of a nag there at the back of my head about the genetics of it all. Like, does this murder gene get passed down? And I had 2 little kids at the time, and I'm like, well, I hope they don't have a life of crime, But,
and that was one of the parts of your book that I thought had so much humor, because you're talking about your uncle and, somebody stealing this. And, it's like, is this really, could we really have that criminal gene?
Yeah, and I think it's partly environment, too. Jersey City was a pretty tough place to grow up around the turn of the century, so I think that was part of it. Excuse me. But, so I went back trying to, just sort of in a fun way, like I said, to look this stuff up, and I couldn't find anything at first, and I kind of became obsessed about it, and I just couldn't stop looking after a while, and it took me 10 years. I went back 4 times, all told, and I really only found the murder 2 years ago. I found the murder file, which was a 600-page case file, and everything I needed to know was in there.
What was so fascinating was you had a dogged diligence, and it seemed like almost everybody you would run into was related to you in some way, or maybe not related, but they had the same name, or they knew somebody. But in the beginning, nobody wanted to help you. Nobody, you would have a lot of murder stories, but they were never your story.
Exactly. When you go to your ancestral village, wherever it may be, I think, this is the world over, the people in the town a lot of the times all have the same name. So you go there, and everybody has the same last name. And so you're probably related to everyone at some point, if you go back far enough, as many generations. But my immediate, I think, relatives, the ones from like a few generations back, wouldn't talk to me because it was a shameful story. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to talk about it. It was not just embarrassing. It was something to be ashamed of, and they carried it with them for decades, And so the people
and generations, yes.
Yeah, so the people who could have talked to me would not. And the people who did talk to me were far removed and didn't know the story. So it was this weird catch-22. And so I left there on that first trip with no information whatsoever, and really frustrated, but determined to go back and find it. But my kids were very young at the time. I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and doing research with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old is not recommended, I have to tell
Right,
you.
Exactly. I felt for you as you were trying to juggle all
the whole
those
first
things.
third of the book, is me having a nervous breakdown. So I went home, I went back to Brooklyn, and I waited for them to grow up. And in the meantime, I read every possible book and document written about the Basilicata, which is the region where we're from. And so when I went back, 10 years later, I was really prepared. So, that mommy patience actually worked out for me, because I did educate myself. Well, and also
you went back alone this time. You didn't take the children. So this time you really were unencumbered and you could really focus.
Yes, and I hired a couple of researchers to help me as well. And we found it in 4 days. It was a miracle. So.
Yeah, and did you find that there was a big language barrier or any custom barrier? Because I always felt every time I've been back to relatives, I have relatives in northern Italy. I haven't been to the southern relatives yet, but they just it seems so excited to see you and all of that, and they just they just want to talk and talk and talk. Did you feel that kind of camaraderie with the family? Because it didn't feel like it from the book, except
because
for the guy that owned the beach place. He seemed really cool. Like he was really excited that to meet you. But the rest of them, they didn't seem like, hey, we have an American cousin or somebody here.
I think I approached it wrong. I should have just gone in and said, I'm here to visit. Hi, nice to meet you. Instead, I went in, like a reporter saying, there's this murder I'm trying to find. I want this information. It was a bad approach, and I learned my lesson.
Let's embarrass our family more. I want to find the putana, and I want to find the murderers.
Exactly. Right. I could have gone in softer, I think. So it was my fault. I take the blame at the end of the day. But, they avoided me like the plague, They didn't want to talk to me.
Calabria is the poorest region in Italy. It is it's right at the boot, right across from Sicily. And I want you to explain to the listeners, because this is something that I really didn't know, this whole idea of the paisans, the people they're working for, the big boss. And I mean, they're paid very little, or they're just paid in food, and they're really kept poor. And then that whole idea of prima notte, I had never, ever heard about that. And I was stunned. I was stunned. Did you find out about it when you were there? Is that when you...
I had no idea. Yeah, when I went back, like I said, it was just sort of like a fun trip, trying to find some information. And as I started digging, I couldn't find my particular story. I found all this history about the area. And unbeknownst to me, it was a feudal farming system until the 1800s. Yes. A feudal farming system. So you basically had the padrone who ran the big farms. It was their land. They owned it. And everybody else worked for them. Talk about the 1%, It was a pretty awful setup. And one of the worst parts of it was that the landowner would often sleep with whatever farmers' wives he wanted to. And the farmers couldn't really do anything about it, because if they protested, they wouldn't get work. And so it was sort of a slave landowner situation,
Really?
There were no chains, but it was a pretty awful situation. You could be beaten and whipped, if you caused trouble. And so there's a particular ritual called prima notte, which you mentioned, it means first night. And the landowner would sometimes sleep with the bride on her wedding night. So the groom had to get lost, and the padrone would sleep with the virgin bride.
Do you have any, you didn't go into detail on how that came about. I'd never heard of any such thing like that. I mean, I could see kings and stuff doing it, but how could that possibly be allowed? I would think, that just seems like such a slap in the face and so horrifying. What was
like I said, I didn't know anything about it when I went, and there were two historians in the town who told me about it. I think one of the first nights I spoke to them, because the reason it came up was that my great-great-grandmother was supposed to have been a putana, which is sort of a loose woman.
Prostitute.
And when I told them that there was someone involved in the story named Greco, who was supposed to be a lover or a lawyer or someone, their eyes lit up, and they said, well, Greco was the name of the landowner. And so it was really just sort of a given that most of the women, the poor women, had to sleep with the landowners. So it wasn't even, it wasn't even a question for them. They were just like, that's what happened. That's how it works.
This is just what happened. Well,
and it happened until the 1800s. It's not like it was just medieval,
That's
recent.
The thing, is that it's very recent. And what was also interesting is that the future husband, who is still not consummated his matrimony with his own wife, he gets compensated with a lamb dinner.
Right. It's called agnello di marito. Someone told me.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's pretty awful.
Lamb was like the sacred food, I guess, because they were so poor. They didn't get meat but once or twice a year, right?
Yeah. You ate meat twice a year. So, that was Christmas and Easter. So that was an extra bonus meal for you. But, it's 9 million Italians left southern Italy. And, this is one of the reasons, and people didn't talk about it when they came. They just said it was poor and they had a bad time. But the details I found out were just incredible and eye-opening, and I just have so much respect for our ancestors of what they went through.
I do too. I mean, as I said, my ancestors are among those 9 million who came. They came at the turn of, around, some came around 1903, some in 1898, some in the 1920s. But what's very interesting too is how discriminatory much discrimination they faced when they got here, and how much prejudice. And doesn't it ring true of what's happening today with other nationalities?
Absolutely. I wrote an op-ed.
Being branded as rapists, criminals, and when they're really just seeking a better life, and they want to bring something that's better here.
Absolutely. There were just droves and droves of people coming over, and they were mostly good, hardworking, poor people. And maybe there were a couple criminals thrown in there, and everybody was branded a criminal. It's like exactly what's happening today. You've got all these people coming over from Syria and Mexico. They just want to make a living. And you get one or two bad eggs, and everybody's, up in arms.
Everybody's branded. Well, they just want to raise their families, and and they want to have each generation be better. And I think what's interesting, after reading your book, I started thinking about this. Of my favorite picture of my mother as a child, and with her parents, is they were so poor. There were 6 kids. And they had immigrated over. They're all barefoot. Their only clothing, they're wearing potato sacks.
Wow.
That's the clothes. Everybody looks dirty, and that was their family portrait. Portrait. My mom she was the baby. She was being held. And when they came over here, they had to hunt for food. Just like they did in the old country. They would go into the woods and illegally. So that's why I thought, hey, I've got criminals too. They would shoot robins and quail and pheasants and rabbits and all that so that they could eat. And they had they had to grow their own food, and they had no indoor toilets, and they had no electricity and no running water. My mom had to empty the chamber pots. But now you look at, another generation, and we're doing better, and the next generation of my children, they're doing better. And, it's like it takes a few generations to step up.
Yeah, and they would sacrifice themselves for us. They took that long journey over here for their kids and their grandkids,
Now, we're talking to Helene Stupinski. She's the author. Her newest book is called Murder in Matera. Do you mind if we talk about what happened with Vida, or do you want to leave that a secret for people to read the book?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I think
we won't then.
About it. Yeah,
we won't. But I think that was what was so interesting, is there are some very good twists and turns in it. And the fact that she was always called a putana, and actually that's sort of a very good thing. It was really sad about the one child that was lost, and I guess it was never found out what happened to the little girl.
No, and we always thought it was a little boy, in my family. It was like there were 3 sons, but when I did the research, I found all the birth records for all her children, and we thought she'd only had 2 or 3 kids, but it turns out she had like 6 or 7 kids. And I kept finding more and more children, in the birth records. And the last one born was this little girl. And there's no record of her dying in Bernalda, in the town, so she must have left with her mother. And she never came over. She never entered America, so she was lost on the way somehow.
Somehow, what a really sad story. And I think that so many immigrants have those stories. And again, that made me just think about, all the immigrants that are trying to cross the seas in these boats that are pirated, and the boats tip over, and how many people are lost.
You're not even hearing any of most of the stories, probably.
I'm sure. We don't.
Horror stories.
And that you had something else that you said here earlier when you were doing this research, how people didn't want to talk about it because they were shamed or whatever. I think that's really what happens in the generations, is as you get further out many years down the line, nobody's shamed about it. People just want to know what happened. But the people who lived it or were close enough to it, they feel that there was something, that there was some guilt or something that was wrong with the family, and it was a burden for them to bear that. And so they never talked about it. It's like Holocaust victims or anybody that has been through a lot of trials. They tend not to talk about it.
Yeah. And, when you go back to these places, they're still living with it. It's not the past for them. It's still the present in a way. They live with it on the streets where they grew up and where their great-grandparents grew up and where their great-great-parents grew up. When you come to America, you sort of shed that past, and so for us, it's not a big deal. We're sort of free of that. And so it's easy for me to go back and look. But for the people who are still there, it's a really difficult thing. And I didn't realize that until I found the murder. And I confronted this woman who wouldn't talk to me. And it just kind of hit me all of a sudden, wait, I'm being a jerk.
Well, you weren't being a jerk. It was that it really was, first of all, she wasn't nice to you from the get-go.
No, she wasn't. She was not nice.
She was miserable. Let's put it that way.
I guess she kind of deserved it.
She seemed like a very miserable human being,
right.
you know.
But
then when you put it in context
stories, you know?
Yeah. It's a whole different story. What do you think? Do you think that when the people in Basilicata, do you think that after a time period this will be forgotten, or is it because there are, that's the same families and they're all married and all of this stuff? Do you think that it just will continue and continue and continue?
You mean the stories getting passed on?
The stories and the shame and the guilt and the fact that they don't even want to talk about their past.
No, it's changing, actually. Just in the 10 years gap, that I had, the first time I went and the last time I went, it had changed. I hired a female researcher to help me, and she's in her 20s. And it's a whole different generation. They don't care.
That's what I was wondering. Is it like the generations that are over here, that they just don't care? Yeah, and what about the stranglehold of the Catholic Church? Because everything for so long was really all about the saints and the relics and all of that. Is that changing too with the younger generation?
Like
there?
I said, the kids there are very modern. The girl who's helping me was a DJ, and she worked for a literary magazine, and they're very sophisticated. The young Italians. It's really not what it used to be. They really don't like to work the farms anymore. The farms are dying out. Because people don't want to work them. They'd rather be videographers or run beach bars or whatever.
Right. They'd rather have some fun. They want to do something that is going to give them some joy in life.
Exactly.
Running the farm probably wasn't one of them.
No. Not by a long shot.
No. What about the food? Are you finding? Because I know that for me, my nonni, we called her and it was nonna, but we
right, nonni, right?
Nonni. She was just an amazing cook, making whatever she could from whatever was available, right? Mm-hmm. And then my mother and my aunts and my uncles, everybody cooked exactly the same. And now my sisters and we all cook just like that. Yeah. Nobody uses a recipe. We can't tell you how to make it. It's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You taste it. Do you find that they're still cooking that way?
Yes, the food is terrific, Yeah. It's just, and it's carried over to this country.
Yes, I think the food and the wine probably always will be, right?
Yeah, the food is just amazing. And the thing with the food now is that it is in abundance. Back then there wasn't much, and they had to stretch it and come up with different ways to cook everything. And now, people have a little bit more money, and some people do have small farms for themselves, and they grow their own vegetables and their own meat or whatever, and it's just, mind-blowing.
But today they grow their own vegetables and their own meat because they get to do it, not because they have to do it.
Exactly.
And they choose, right?
Yeah. And they
choose. Well, you wrote in your book about how they would stretch the bread by adding sawdust to it.
Yeah, it was bad times. Yeah, whatever they could find.
Yes, not so great. A quick question. So, being Italian, your husband, Stepinski, is that Polish?
That's my father's name, actually.
Oh, it's
my father is Polish. My mom is Italian.
So, your father was another nationality, and then your mother was
my mother's Italian. Yeah, the stories are from her side. Yeah.
But did your dad have stories too?
Oh yeah. Maybe that's the next book. I had relatives in Poland who were Jewish, and when the Nazis invaded their town, quickly converted to Catholicism. So we found that out fairly recently. So that could be the next book. I'm not sure.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Yeah, I always thought that, having visited Poland and unfortunately, been to the concentration camps, which were so horrible and everything, is I thought the same thing, is that, if you were Jewish, why not just be something else? Maybe once you found out how bad they were. And I actually interviewed an author who wrote a book on her family who actually survived because they pretended not to be Jewish.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people did in Poland. It's one thing to be here and to judge people and say, oh, how could they do that? They're self-hating. But, when it's life or death, it's a life or death situation. You've got Nazis invading your town, I mean, you want to live, So it's a really fascinating story.
Yes.
I really like to delve into that one. So.
I agree with you. I agree. I mean, I think that when, it's survival of the fittest and you do what you can to keep your family alive. And to me, that's being very brave. Not being cowardly at all. So
it was a secret
now that you have finished with Murder in Matera, you said that you just have done the audiobook of it. Tell us what that was like.
It was really exhausting, I have to say. I had heard that it was difficult, and I didn't really believe people, and I went in there, I did it, and, I had plans to meet a friend for lunch during the lunch break, and so I said to the engineer, what time will we be breaking for lunch? I'm going to meet someone. He said, oh, no, you're not allowed to leave. And I said, why not? He said, this is so hard that people don't come back. Oh. And he was right. It was really difficult, but it was really fulfilling.
Difficult. I know. I do a lot of different voiceover things and all of that, and one of my books was Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul, and I had to do the audio portion of it, and I thought, oh, being an actor, it's going to be so, I've done this a million times, and it was just like you said. I had actually parked in a zone where I wasn't really supposed to park, but I figured, I'm going to ace this. I'll have it in and out. When I came back, my car had been towed.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's very true. Well, I want to give out your website because we want people to go and pick up this book, Murder in Matera, and no matter what nationality you are, we all came from somewhere where America's a huge melting pot. And this story of family and forgiveness, and the tagline is a true story of passion, family, and forgiveness in southern Italy. It'll resonate with everybody. It's HeleneStapinski.com, HeleneStapinski.com. So is your family really proud of you? Your kids are much older now, obviously.
They are. My 17-year-old just finished reading the book. My 13-year-old hasn't read it yet. But my mom is in the middle of it right now, actually.
Oh, good.
She was too worried.
Don't you find as a writer, it's really the hardest people to read your book, Helene, as your family? I mean, I always it's sort of like you sit on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I know. It's about them as well. My sister was one of the first people to read it. I gave her the galleys, and she wrote me this long note, just and called me crying, and she said, "You've redeemed Vita. You've changed what we know about our history, and I'm so proud of her, and I'm proud of you." And it was this beautiful note that she wrote me, and that it was all worth it just for that note from my sister,
Oh, so, yeah, really absolutely. Terrific. Yes, absolutely. That's just so sweet. Well, I think that's the beautiful part of your book is that Vita has been redeemed, So that's the good news, and you have
to read it and find out.
Yeah, you have to read what happens. You have to read what happens and how this whole redemption comes about. So perhaps you don't have to worry so much about your kids now, right?
No, they're fine. They're formed.
I think they're going to be just fine. I think they are just fine. Well, is your next book then going to be about your dad?
I don't know yet. I'm still doing publicity for this one, and I'm teaching, and I'm also still writing for the Times. I'm doing a column every 2 weeks, and that's kind of picking up a lot of time. And in summer, so I have to take my son to college. He's leaving for college in mid-August. So I'm taking a little bit of a break.
I mean, when you think about when you were writing this book, he was a little boy, and now he's going to college.
Exactly. I know. It breaks me up all the time. I'm in tears all the time.
Yes. Oh, I wanted to ask you because I love The Moth. So you actually were a featured performer on this. Tell us a little bit about that before I let you go.
That was back when after Five Finger Discount came out. That was my first book. I did the Moth main stage. I told a story about working at an ice cream parlor. I worked at Carvel, I don't know if people know Carvel. I don't know if that's an East Coast thing, but
I think it's East Coast. So we're in California, but that's okay. People are listening on the East Coast.
It was a chain, yeah. It was an ice cream chain, and I used to steal the ice cream, and so that was like my version of stealing stuff, because in my family there were just generations and generations of people who stole things. And so I told this hilarious story about stealing ice cream from the place and getting caught, and so anyway, that was my moth story, and it was really great. It was a great night. It was really memorable. I love the moth.
How
really
fun. I mean, because that is really a great venue. Also, how did you end up being a newscaster in Alaska? I mean, being from New Jersey and now living in Brooklyn, how did that come about?
Well, I had been in the New York area my whole life. I grew up in Jersey City, which is right across the river from New York City. I went to NYU, and I really wanted to get out of here. I just had to escape, and I wanted an adventure. And so I wound up joining the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, which is sort of like the Peace Corps, but through the Catholic Church. And I was sent up to Nome, Alaska, to be a news director up there. And that was mind-blowing, to say the least.
In Nome, Alaska. That's where my dad was in World War II.
Really?
In Nome, Alaska.
Yeah, it's right near Siberia. I mean, it's way the hell up there.
Yeah.
And my first book is actually about that year that I spent there. It was my thesis project for my MFA at Columbia University, and it's never been published. So that might be the next book. I'm not sure.
That's the exciting part of writing books that don't get published, is maybe it just wasn't the right timing. So now that you have all these other ones, maybe you'll go back to some of your manuscripts and
I might
polish them up and get them out there, because it sounds like so much fun. I mean, it really sounds pretty fascinating. And plus, you're such an incredible researcher. It's going to be filled with all kinds of great stuff.
Right.
Well, Helene, thank you so much for gracing our airwaves here on Star Style. Be the Star You Are. It's really, really fun to talk to a fellow Italian whose family has lived through some of the things that I believe my family have lived through.
You have to find your story.
Those stories, yes, that prima notte just really got me. I wish that my nanny was still alive.
Yeah, I want to find questions, right?
Because on her documents, I'm actually looking at her document of coming over. She arrived over here on a boat in steerage called the Paris. She was a mail order guide, basically, to my grandfather, who was also Italian, but he just sent for a friend and said, "Hey, do you have any virgin daughters left?"
Wow.
Anyway, but you know what? Her occupation was listed as maid.
Oh, no.
Maid. So I think so many of them, that's probably what they got listed as they came over.
Yeah.
A lot of the women. Unless it was listed as putana, right?
Right. I don't think they listed that.
I don't think so. I'm not sure they'd get in. Well,
I'm so glad you read it and enjoyed it. And
on the show. Again, we want people
when you get interviewed.
We want people to go to her website, because you will love this book, HeleneStapinski.com, HeleneStapinski.com. Thank you so much, Helene, for being on our show. And best of success for you with all the rest of your books. This has laid a great foundation.
Great. And maybe I'll talk to you again with the next book.
Yes, definitely. You just be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you. So you've been listening to Star Style. Be the Star You Are. I'll be back in a bit. Don't go away.
Be the star you are. The star you are. Be the star you are. Be the star you are. The star you are.
The annual cost of illiteracy to American taxpayers is over $225 billion. Help increase literacy, reduce violence, and improve positive media messages by making a tax-deductible contribution to Be the Star You Are charity. A top-rated nonprofit, Be the Star You Are promotes positive role models, produces positive radio broadcasts, and donates positive books to empower women, families, and youth. Be a power partner and join our galaxy of stars. Visit our website at BeTheStarYouAre.org to make a tax-deductible donation using PayPal, or send checks to P.O. Box 376, 376, Moraga, California, 94556. BeTheStarYouAre.org. Dare to care.
You are the star.
Change your world. Change your life. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
It's power time on Star Style. Be the star you are with your passion, purpose, and possibility producer, Cynthia Bryan. Now, back to the power party.
This business of show business is calling out.
Well, wasn't that a fantastic, fun interview? The book is really great, Murder in Matera, Helene Stupinski. You will really be riveted by it. There's so much research. She really worked hard to get it all right, and I don't know how she did all of that, but it gives me hope that we can all go back and find more information about our families. Well, at the top of the hour, I talked to you about planning to live to 100 or longer, and some of what you can do. So I just want to go over that again, because in science labs all over the world, researchers are exploring ways that we can delay those effects of aging and extend our years of healthy life. I mean, we're already living nearly 3 decades longer on average than our ancestors from a century ago. So a 10-year-old child today has a 50% chance of living to be at least 104. Now, if you're wondering what you or that 10-year-old might do with all that extra time on Earth, I have a suggestion for you, and you're probably not going to be surprised, coming from Be the Star You Are and me as an executive director and a longtime volunteer. I say volunteer. Share your skills and your passion with others. There are so many needs out there, and when you devote your time to filling other people's needs, it is like that silver bullet that will help you feel better about yourself while you're helping society feel better. Now, most of us who have volunteered know the positive jolt of what it's like. It's like that giver's high, right? So when you volunteer, the benefits that come back to you are, I think they're like 10 times more than whatever you give. You contribute your talents to others, and it's more than transitory. It's more than just that initial buzz. It really is life-changing for you. Whenever I have people that contact me, and I just had one contact me today, with that I had helped way back in 2002, and it was one of my coaching students, and I helped this guy relaunch himself, redesign himself, rebrand himself, and get out into the world. And now, all these years later, he says he's just so happy, he's doing what he loves, etc. And he said how he thinks about how grateful he is to me. Well, that means a ton. So I really do feel that when we help others, we really are helping ourselves. And we never know, you never know what that smile you're doing or whatever it is. Now, the payoff is the social good that's done, right? And all you have to do is look around you at volunteers who have helped in a garden, like an urban garden, or people who go to the food banks and they feed the hungry, or when, like our teens did this past weekend, they went into the senior center and they did a pop-up concert for all these wheelchair-bound seniors, or like our book review team does in reading to other people, or just helping people with literacy, whatever it is. Donating your time to benefit others has a lot of deep individual value as well. There really is a lot of research that tells us that those who volunteer have lower mortality rates, less depression, and they have a greater sense of control over their life, as well as higher rates of self-esteem and happiness. And I really could vouch for that. So using health and volunteering data from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there's a report that found that states with a high volunteer rate even have lower instances of heart disease. And some studies are showing that volunteers who devote more than 100 hours or more per year to volunteer activities are the most likely to experience health benefits. So all these findings are indicating that in general, the older the volunteer, the greater the personal benefits of volunteering. So it doesn't matter how old you are or how old you get. There's always going to be somebody that you'll be able to help. Volunteering can really renew that sense of purpose. It can prevent the social isolation that's recognized with health hazard, especially for those who are in their elderly years. And I just think that there are plenty of places out there so that you can find a volunteer and resources. If you're looking for a place to volunteer, there's a wonderful website called volunteermatch.org. You can go to it. You can type in the kind of work you're looking for. If you want it to be in your city, you can do that. If you want to volunteer with Be the Star You Are, we have lots of virtual opportunities that might be beneficial to you. You can go to BeTheStarYouAre.org. I think that you'll really find that volunteering is the secret to longevity and a happier longevity. Well, thank you so much for being such great listeners and allowing me to be here with you every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you are always tuned in to Voice America, the Empowerment Channel, and to Star Style, Be the Star You Are. And on Tuesdays at noon Pacific, make sure you're listening to Express Yourself, because that is where teens talk and the world listens, and kids really get to express their viewpoints. For more information about Star Style Productions, or to book me for any coaching or writing or any kind of consultation, visit CynthiaBryan.com. My new book, Growing with the Goddess Gardener, should be here anytime. The proofs keep coming back, and there's always some mistake that was made on the publisher's side there, so I get frustrated, but it's going to be here one of these days. I'm hoping to encourage, inspire, inform, and muse, and motivate you and get you to read a book this week, because a book is like a garden in your pocket. I highly recommend Murder in Matera by Helene Stupinski, so check that out. And remember to imagine your dreams as if they always exist, because they do already exist if you speak it and think it and make it so. And until next week when we celebrate again, remember that love always wins, kindness always prevails, and smiles will keep us happy. My name is Cynthia Bryan for Star Style, thanking you, and I encourage you, go out into the world and shine brightly. Be the star you are.
Be the star you are, the star you are. Be the star you are the star.
It's been a pleasure bringing you our life-changing program, Star Style, Be the Star You Are. We have you on our radar, as it's our goal to inspire, inform, entertain, and motivate you to be the star you were born to be. For more information, visit starstyleradio.com. And to make a donation to the charity, go to BeTheStarYouAre.org. Ignite the flame that burns brightly within. Take charge of your life and coach yourself to success with our dynamic host and empowerment architect, Cynthia Bryan, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel for another serving of champagne for the spirit and a power boost to live with Star Style. Until we celebrate together next week, be the star you are.